All right. Good to see everybody here. We have a couple guests. Well, I really can't call Nicholas a guest. He's my co-host. I mean, he's here all the time. Nicholas, apologist, Layman Apologist. Sorry about that.
Well, just Layman. That's a new one.
Well, it's not lame. I mean, I guess that's good.
Oh, I got called out today, to be fair.
Oh no.
I'm off to a good start here. I can't even put words in the right order. And then we've got Whitaker, Jason Whitaker, Deerwood Christian. How you doing,
Absolutely.
Jason?
What's happening? Hey man, how are you? Thank y'all for having me.
Good to see you, brother.
And Jason is here. Jason is here for the topic. You see it down there across the screen. Was it wise for the founders of the PCA to leave the mainline denomination? Jason is in a PCA church, so give us all the inside information about the PCA. And I thought Jason would enjoy this topic. This is based on a debate that happened recently.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many people know about this, but between Matthew Everhard,
Mr. Everhard.
Yeah, in the top left corner there, Pastor Matthew Everhard. He is PCA pastor. PCA is a very conservative denomination theologically. And then on the bottom there, the other side of the debate is Richard Ackerman, who goes by Redeemed Zoomer online. And Richard is with the PCUSA, so he's kind of defending the mainline denomination, the PCUSA. And Everhard is more defending the conservative PCA. And we have to keep saying that because PCA and PCUSA sounds really similar. So hopefully by the end of this discussion, everybody will have straight in their mind the difference. These are Presbyterian denominations. Is there anything else you want to say about the PCA, Jason, while we're just kind of introducing it?
The A stands for America. The USA stands for USA. But besides that, though, I mean, in the name sense, that's the only difference. In the theology, there's several other differences. So let's have at it.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to get to that. I do want to start off with a very important topic, though, that I didn't tell you guys about. But it's good to just start to kind of warm things up.
Bring it on.
Get our get the brains flowing a little bit. Mine is not, although I don't drink this a lot, but Coca-Cola, isn't that produced in Atlanta?
Jason? It is. Well, I have water. It's produced everywhere.
Look at you, you've been all healthy, and me and Tim just drinking the sugary stuff.
What's going on? Look, good. Man, come on.
I usually drink water, to be honest, but today I happen to have a Coke. By the way, in the comments, I was already seeing as we were getting started, a lot of people watching from Texas. So yeah, great to see lots of Texas representatives. And I was curious if you guys could tell me in the comments, what's the temperature right now in Texas? Because the last 2 days, I'm up in New Hampshire, which is pretty far north, and we had 2 days that were about 96, 97 degrees. So the New Hampshire people were dying because that's really hot for us. But I'm curious,
There's a 90, 87.
It's 90 here. Oh, okay. So actually, for whatever reason, our temp is maybe a little higher right now than at least where they are in Texas. But Jason,
what did you say? Jason, you were pretty high.
Yeah, it's 94. I mean, there have been times when it's been hotter in other parts of America than in Georgia. So I mean, it's not terribly surprising.
True.
But it's just it's hot like fish grease. I ain't gonna lie, it's hot.
And I'm gonna just put it out there too. Like, I totally understand because my parents live in Florida. Oh yeah, it's a different ball game when you get down south. The sunlight is way more direct for a lot longer part of the day. So 97 here is still not as bad as 97 in Florida. But when you're used to the temperatures here, 97 is bad. So we were dying. Oh, okay. We got a 92 in Memphis, Tennessee.
Yep,
Yeah.
sounds about right.
Of course. San Diego, someone says it's 77, perfect weather. Yeah, well, always perfect there.
It's San Diego, though. Let's remember. Hold on now.
Temperature.
Right. That's about all you're going to get.
What are you implying, Jason?
Nothing.
Is Atlanta perfect?
Oh, absolutely, man. It's the land of not being perfect. It is the land of not perfect. Trust me.
Oh yeah, and I think one of the Texans said it is 200% humidity there. So yeah, that'll do
That's
it.
raining 200%. That's raining down and up. Like, what in the world is that?
Yeah. The other thing is, with the kinds of conditions you have, like in Texas, and certainly as you get up into the Midwest, you have real potential for tornadoes. Yes. Whereas where I live, we don't really deal with that. And then, of course, hurricanes in some of the states down there. Whew. All right, you guys are ready now for my preview topic. This is just preliminary topic here.
For a minute there, I thought that was your topic.
No, it's not.
Weather.
No, this is it. J.K. Rowling, the author of Harry Potter, someone apparently wrote, "You're an author. You should know how to spell color correctly." And she wrote, "I'll spell color with the U, color without a U, the moment Americans stop pronouncing herbs as herbs." So I had a feeling, Nicholas, you might be able to relate to this. Being in Ireland.
You like Ireland. Tell the truth.
Yes and no. Like I've told you before, I actually agree with the American spelling on words sometimes more than I do yours. But the one thing I will say is JK's always got a very sharp wit on her, and I think she absolutely nailed this one, to be honest.
I actually thought that her response, I'm not saying on this topic you would agree with her 100%, but the way she articulated it kind of reminded me of you. The way she said, "I'll spell color the moment Americans stop pronouncing herbs as herbs." Anyway, do you pronounce it herbs, Nicholas?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
I mean, you're consistent.
Yeah,
because we say herb for the man's name.
To me, I honestly, I genuinely don't care what way people pronounce words as long as I can make out what they're trying to say. Now, the only one that will drive me slightly batty is whenever someone tries to pronounce tomato and they'll say tomato, which I know is more of an American thing, but I'm just like, it's tomato.
That's an expression here, actually. Tomato.
Yeah.
It's like it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
But to you, it matters. By the way, Colton, I got to throw this up here. He actually does pronounce the H, but everyone around him hates it.
I knew I like Colton.
Colton, if you just move to the UK, you'll fit right in there. At least when you say herb. I don't know about other words. Colton's in Texas. We have a lot of Texans.
Yeah.
Apparently today. This is our Texas episode. I don't know if the topic today has anything to do with it. A lot of viewers there maybe are interested in this particular topic.
Maybe a lot of Texan Presbyterians. I don't know.
There are a lot of Texans. Texas is just a big state. It is a really big state.
Yeah. So
someone might be able to tell me too, like if you put Texas and you overlaid it over Europe, like how? I mean, I assume it would just take up.
Texas?
So this is what I was going to say. My country alone fits into Texas 13 times.
That's crazy.
Yep.
13.
Then again, so does my state.
I'm
not sure about that actually. New Hampshire I'd have to look it up. Maybe I'll have a chance. I told you I can't multitask. Look up square mileage of New Hampshire versus Ireland. Are you talking about Northern Ireland or are you talking about all of Ireland?
Northern Ireland.
Okay.
All right. Just so you know, so we can move on. Georgia would fit 4.5 times. I was going to say 3. And you said New Hampshire? Yeah, let's see. All right, let's see. Okay, Tim. How many times do you think it would fit? Matter of fact, in the chat, without looking, don't be cheating. Put in the chat, how many times would New Hampshire fit into the state of Texas? In the chat, do not go and look it up. Put it in the chat. Let's see what we got.
And don't ask ChatGPT.
500 times is
crazy. Say that one more time, Jason. The state of what?
How many times would New Hampshire, because that's where you live, right?
Yep.
Okay. How many times would New Hampshire fit into the state of Texas? Don't do ChatGPT or anything like that. I got 525. This person said thousands. 10 to 15.
I'm more with Leslie. I thought maybe around 15.
All right, Kevin.
I don't even know if I get is to even hesitate to guess.
7 times 70. Man, get out of here.
Biblical answer from a pastor. 7 times 70.
I love it.
That's how many times you have to forgive us, New Hampshireites.
Samantha says 8.
All right, 8 times. Okay. All right. So drum roll. No drum roll necessary. Approximately.
Wait. No. Oh,
I just said it. Hey. You got drum roll? "29 times. You're the winner."
Oh, wow.
Come on down, Kevin Briggins.
Yeah. Yeah, someone said 25, right? Yes.
25,
we're going to put that
right
winner
there.
up there. Kevin, for getting the right answer, we're putting your name on the screen here and telling you good job.
And you get the wonderful prize.
Actually, I can do better than that. I also have I thought I had oh yeah, here we go. Yes, we are, Kevin. The studio audience is now clapping for you.
Now you're multitasking.
Well, that's why it took me so long to put it up there.
Yeah, there you go.
Because I'm not.
All right, let's go cause some trouble.
All right, let's get at it. See, now I gotta multitask back to what our topic is.
Single task. You got a single task or something.
So single task back to this actual topic. So again, if you're joining us, we're talking about a debate here that happened just a few days ago between the man on the top left, who is a PCA pastor, and he's defending the creation of the PCA, which is a Presbyterian conservative theological denomination. And then on the bottom, you have Richard Ackerman, aka Redeemed Zoomer, defending the mainline Presbyterian denomination known as the PCUSA. So the debate question was basically, was it wise, or I think the statement was, it was wise for the people to leave the PCUSA and found the PCA. It was wise for them to do that. That's what Matthew Everhard is defending, and Richard Ackerman is saying it was not wise. So I think I'm going to guess Jason would be more in agreement with Pastor Everhard. I'm just guessing.
That is correct.
And I know that Nicholas is always trying to take Redeemed Zoomer's side. No, I'm kidding. He definitely would not take Redeemed Zoomer's side. So actually, I don't think I said this before, but we're going to be having Pastor Everhard on the channel to talk about his book. I didn't say it today, but I'm saying it now. So yeah, we're gonna have him on. He may comment a little bit on this debate too, but everybody here who's with us, we're all theologically conservative. So in terms of our actual doctrinal beliefs, we would all be much more in line with the PCA rather than the mainline PCUSA. So in that sense, we would all definitely be in a lot of agreement. But then again, the question here might be, what about the debate itself? Like, who actually won the debate? Because that's kind of a separate question, as you know, whether you agree with someone versus whether you think they won the debate. So that's going to be kind of just the main themes that we're talking about today. And if you have questions in the audience as we go along here, let us know any questions or thoughts that you have about this topic. So I guess maybe just give any general, just to start with, any general kind of response that you have to the debate that you want to share, if either of you have something you want to share. Nicholas, I'm guessing you do have some general thoughts.
Yeah, I'm going to keep the majority of mine because I know we'll probably get into it as we go out, so okay. I don't want to throw everything out scattershot at once. But what I will say
I'm tempting you to just put it all out there right now, but
I easily could. It's just going to take us in too many tangents. But what I would say is I had to watch this debate twice because we've had this conversation before. You've already alluded to it, Tim. It's very easy to go, that's my guy, he won the debate. It takes a lot more stepping away to sit back and go, without bias, who did win the debate? And I think my answer might shock a few people, but we'll leave that to the time. However, what I will say is the reason why I had to watch this twice was the first time I just wanted to watch it, just react to it naturally. The second time I actually wanted to go through it and make some notes on it. Didn't know we were going to be doing this at the time, but we were also going to host an X space reacting to it as well. So I have plenty of notes by me, so I'm ready for today's episode. That's all I'm going to say.
All right. Did you have any thoughts, I'm ready to jump. Jason?
No, I think this is going to be a good discussion. I'm looking forward to it. So let's get to it with no further ado.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I think that people. I'll tell what I saw in the comments, sure. Which is people seem to think that, at least from what I saw, a lot of people felt like Redeemed Zoomer may have won on the actual
thesis
itself. Yeah, the thesis. But they and Nicholas. You might agree with some of these people, but they said that Ackerman came across as rude at certain points.
Well, he definitely did. Like, I don't think... Oh, did we lose him?
Oh, am I not there?
He's right there.
You dipped out for me, so it might be on my end. What was the last thing you said?
Just that Pastor Everhard was a lot more gracious. I think that's the last thing I said.
To be honest, I was actually glad to see a little bit more. I personally found a little bit more of a feisty side came out of Matt, which I was glad to see. He certainly was gracious. I'm not saying he wasn't gracious, but he definitely gave as good as he got. I think Redeemed Zoomer realized that he was perhaps coming across rude because near the end of the debate, he says, look, I'm normally used to being in debates with people like Jay Dyer and, Roman Catholic apologists, and it's more of a dog-eat-dog world. So I think even he realized he was perhaps coming across rude. But that aside, I actually thought this was a good debate. And yeah, like Jason, I'm just excited to get into it. So
yeah. I love that you brought that up, Nicholas, because you're right. Richard Ackerman did say that he did kind of give a little bit of an apology almost for coming across as rude. And also, just so everybody knows, Richard is a New Yorker, like a New York City New Yorker, I believe. So they're not always known as being the most gentle in the way that they express themselves. And then Matt Everhard, I mean, he's lived in different places, but I think that Matt kind of represents portions of our country that are a lot more polite in the way that they interact. But just personalities coming out there too. Richard Ackerman is a very analytical and kind of like emotions are not almost like the main thing for him. He's just like boom, 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 which for debate actually works really well. because you really kind of want to keep a little bit of distance with emotion. On the other hand, having some pathos is good, and I think Matthew Everhard did a great job. So even if you might say whoever won, but they both did a good job, I actually would say.
And I think it's also just in case people maybe aren't, because I'm assuming, I may be wrong, but I'm assuming with our audience it probably is. Because what I saw is, again, because I work with a lot of younger men, especially online, this was like a generational debate for them, and it seemed to be split generationally versus whether they thought Everhard won or whether Zoomer won. And what I would point out here is, just in case our audience is maybe not as familiar, Matt, like they said multiple times during this in a way, but like Matt and Richard are actually friends in real life. Like they communicate back and forth. It's not just like an online thing they have. So while they both did get a little bit feisty with each other, they both said it was just in the spirit of debate. So,
and let me also add, sometimes it's the format, because we're online. It's easy to step on each other's toes. And I think you really have to have like the timer on there and really lay out the very keen. If you're going to do a real debate, you have this many minutes to give your opening, this many minutes to rebut, this many minutes to cross-examine, so on and so forth, and really have that timer up there and really stick to it. It is hard to do it in an atmosphere like this where it's really more of a discussion. I'm not saying that they didn't do a debate, but I'm just saying sometimes it's just a discussion, and we're just having like we're just sitting on the stoop talking. And mind you, it's a whole lot. It's a different experience when you're having these kind of discussions in live, in the same studio, looking at the human. It's very different than when you're online, because it's easy to come across very rude. I got to get in and get my point, so on and so forth. And if you don't have that real hard, debate moderator, you have so much time, light go off, or, some kind of indicator, it can come across as rude, but it's really just a discussion.
Yeah.
And having a talk and laying out my points, and I want to, into such a nature. So
I think this was formatted more like a formal debate than a lot of online discussions, which is good. I think there was even some cross-examination, which is good.
Yeah.
The other thing that made this good is you had two Presbyterians, and I'm generalizing, but I feel like Presbyterians, they tend to be very book-oriented people, and they tend to be used to writing and used to communicating out of what they've written. So that's actually really good for this kind of format, because they had things that they kind of wrote and were prepared to say. And when you're kind of just facing a camera, that's actually a really good. So I felt like it was for not being totally live where they're all together. I thought it was presented in a way that was it was pretty smooth, actually. And they did actually interact, but they weren't talking over each other. So that was good. But yeah, I mean, ideally, a debate would be all together live, because there's kind of a dynamic there when you're right there face to face with a person. And that's kind of the fun sometimes of watching a debate, is just seeing how the two people actually act face to face. So that kind of is missing online.
I would also say too, just before we get stuck into it, Keith Foskey did a really good job moderating, I thought, as well. Sometimes the moderators don't actually get the respect they deserve. Keith did well.
Good job.
Oh, I agree. There was was there one time, I want to say, where someone appealed to Keith?
Matt appealed, yeah.
Yeah, like to say, hey, this is getting off topic or something like that.
I don't know if we'll come to it, because it's probably going to be quite hard to find unless you had timestamps, but that time in particular, it's because it was during Matt's time to question Richard. Richard, instead of answering the question, was going off. You're not supposed to give statements, really. So,
yeah. Yeah, and if you have any specific times written down, Nicholas, that
I only have notes. I didn't think about the timestamp. So
I wasn't planning to really show. I just encourage people to watch it because it's a really good debate. But we will explain anything that needs to be explained here. But I'll put up Colton's comment because this is a little bit of I think something to talk about a little bit here. Zoomer stuck to the thesis better. I struggle to form an opinion on the reconquista movement, however you say it. I have a friend who's a conservative pastor in a mainline church, and I support him. So reconquista is Redeem Zoomer, Richard Ackerman's movement he's part of, trying to retake the mainline denominations with conservative theology. That's the concept. So Colton is basically saying he's having a bit of a hard time really forming a clear opinion on that. Do you guys have any thoughts about that generally? Or if you want to relate it to the debate, you can.
I think we'll probably get into it as we start watching parts of the debate, because I think the audience need to see some of this, because some of them have said here they haven't witnessed it yet. But what I'll say very briefly is I know some of the young guys involved in the movement. I think it's a noble goal. I don't know how successful it's going to be, like Lord willing, maybe, but I think it's a noble goal. But I think with a lot of them, and I may be wrong on this, but we've talked about this so many times on the podcast already, there's a real push now for young people to get into more serious, more older paths. And I think for a lot of them, they see this as like a real noble goal. Will this retake the PCUSA from the Liberals? This retake it, this make it what it once was. So I'm kind of removed from it being here in Ireland. I look at it and I think, yeah, it's a noble goal, but...
So you don't have the PCUSA in Ireland?
No, definitely not.
What do you have out there, though? Seriously, what are the options for Presbyterian?
Well, Reformed Presbyterian, or basically the Presbyterian Church in Ireland, so the PCA.
So you have one thing.
No, we have Reformed Presbyterians as well.
Okay. I wasn't following you. You have Reformed Presbyterians, and you have PCA.
PCI, yeah.
Oh, PCI. That makes more sense.
Yeah.
What's PCI?
Presbyterian Church in Ireland.
Church in Ireland.
Yeah.
You guys are like cousins here.
But that's what it is. Like no matter, well, I'm not saying no matter, because there's countries it's not in, but like if you're in a country that has a Presbyterian church, you're likely going to find Presbyterian church of whatever. So yeah, but the Reformed. I was going to say the Reformed Presbyterian that I'm going to, they'd be more like they're in the lineage of the Covenanters. So
now those two, are they theologically like
similar?
I guess what I'm trying to say is it equivalent at all to what's happening here in America, or it sounds very different? Yeah.
No, well, it's not that different. It's different on a few things. Like, obviously, the Reformed Presbyterian Church over here is they're Covenanters, so they're exclusive samity. Few other like minor details where they would differ slightly, but nothing major. So
the main thing is that they're Covenanters. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So like the Covenanters, as in like from Scotland. Do you ever see the little banner for Christ's crown and covenant? Matt Everhard posts it all the time. He's a big Covenanter guy.
Okay. I'm not really... Remember, I'm the resident Baptist here, so you got to really put the cookies on the bottom shelf for me. What exactly is it that makes them distinct? Like a Covenanter...
Oh, that's a topic for another day. That's a huge topic to get into. We can do a show on it, but yeah, that's
you weren't prepared to get into that. Yeah, okay.
It's more just like I'm moving in there. Like I know enough about their beliefs that I want to be a part of it, especially because it's one of the churches locally to me that's faithful. Because there's very few faithful churches where I live. But yeah, I don't want to state something.
Right, I got you.
And it not be true. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we could always get someone, maybe a pastor from that group. That's always an option, because we had Jason's pastor came on this channel,
Yeah,
and gave us a very nice rundown of the PCA form of church government. That was really good.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, Nicholas, maybe you could, since you took notes and listened to it a couple times, maybe you could give us, kind of a, you kind of maybe saw the flow of it, watching it a couple times. So, what are like some things that, you think we should be reacting to specifically? I have some general things too, but do you have some things you want to get to?
Well, I was going to say it's going to be hard without knowing the timestamps, because I don't think Keith has any timestamps on the video. But what I would say is probably good to listen to. Like, we could only maybe listen to like a minute of each, because obviously they were given 10 minutes. But I would maybe jump to a minute or less, obviously. But maybe jump to part of Matt's opening statement, then a part of Richard's. Because I think that's a good place to start. Because, like Colton said, like I didn't want to get into this early, but Matt, while he performed very well in my opinion, and I actually agree with Matt, by the way, so I'm on Matt's side. However, what I would say is Matt did technically stray from the thesis topic. The thesis was it wise to split? He didn't really touch on that too much. What Matt more focused on was the PCUSA today and all the horrors and abominations that's in it, which is true, I agree with. But on a debate-wise, that's why a lot of these young men, especially, because they are sticklers for things like that, like rules. So the moment Matt didn't really stick to the thesis topic, that was enough for them to say, well, Zoomer won. So
yeah, I'm a little worried if I start showing too much, it's going to be, unless you just want me to show it just for the sake of people hearing a little bit of what he has to say.
I think, yeah, play a little bit, because
I can do that.
Yeah,
I'll play a little bit, but I think if we play too much, it's going to take up a lot of time, especially
it will, but it's just for the sake of, like, I can't find the comment now, but there's a couple of people in here saying they hadn't seen the debate yet, so I think it would be good to get Matt and Zoomer in their own words versus just what we're saying about them.
Okay. Let me show a little bit of Matt's opening statement.
For having me tonight. This is an important conversation, and I do want to defend the thesis. The thesis is that the founders of the PCA were very wise to leave the mainline and to form a new denomination because, and here's my reasoning, because they were biblically faithful, they were confessionally orthodox, and they were very much concerned to avoid evil. Now, in order to support this thesis, I'm going to bring 12 main points to consideration. The first one, and I do have to go through this material rather quickly. The first one is that the PCUSA, the mainline denomination, has become, unfortunately, one of the largest organized queer advocacy groups in the world. Now, Keith, I should let your viewers know here that we're going to have to use some adult terminology, and so viewer discretion is advised tonight. But the PCUSA has largely repudiated, unfortunately, the biblical teaching on sex and gender. And Mr. Moderator, I want to proffer for us tonight Genesis 19, Leviticus 18, Romans 1, and 1 Corinthians 6 as text to be considered in this. Now, in 2011, the PCUSA removed what is called the Fidelity and Chastity Clause from their Book of Order. This was Amendment 10A. This is highly significant because that means that the PCUSA then actively was enabled to ordain homosexuals to the ministry of word and sacrament. Now, I know what I just said is very shocking for most reputable conservative Christian denominations, that a denomination would ordain homosexuals to the ministry, but that is in fact what the PCUSA did.
All right, so kind of comes out swinging there. Now, I heard him say, here's the thesis and here's how I'm going to prove it, right. But you're basically saying you think he diverged from it somehow.
Yeah, so I want to pass over to Jason in a minute because I want to hear his thoughts. But what I'll say very briefly is that's exactly what I was about to bring up. I love Matt. I can't wait to have him on the channel. He's a guy I've followed for years. I've interacted with him on and off. I am on Matt's side on this topic. However, from a purely debate standpoint, if I was to remove myself and say who presented the better case for the thesis statement, it was Redeemed Zoomer, because he actually stuck to the thesis. Matt opened by, I want to defend the thesis. And I know we don't have time here right now going through it, but his opening statement was all about things that have happened in 2013 onwards. So he was talking about, how homosexuals have been ordained, women have been ordained. You look at the website, it's full of drag queens. All of that, I agree with, horrific, horrendous, should have no place in something that is known as a church. So I'm on Matt's side on that. But I would love to get Matt's view on this to hear how he felt it went from that point of view. But what I would disagree with is whenever he says, I would like to defend the thesis statement, and instead of talking about 1973, which is, Jason, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, when the actual split happened. So he should have been defending why it was wise from 1973 to split. So he could have talked about some of the things that were happening then and there that caused the split. However, respectfully, I think Matt was more focused on hammering the point that the PCUSA is apostate. Wrong. I think that's what Matt's goal was. But anyway, sorry, Jason, over to you.
No problem. If you could envision a very large tree, a humongous tree, and one night a lightning bolt hits it and the tree splits, and there's two large pieces now, but it's still growing. Each piece is still growing. And one side, however, is only growing fruit that is extremely poisonous for whatever reason. The other side is growing fruit that is extremely beneficial. And instead of course, you want to go get that fruit from the side that's very beneficial, that's good and nutritious for you, not the fruit that's poisonous. Matt, in my opinion, starts out discussing the poisonous fruit of the tree, not the night that the lightning bolt struck the tree and split it apart. And so by saying I'm going to expound on why it was wise for the tree to be split, let's just say like that tree to be split, he's talking about the fruit of the tree, which again, nobody's arguing to the contrary. But I think the problem is it's so egregious and it's such low-hanging fruit. It's so easy to point out the differences between the PCA and the PCUSA that I think Matt went for let me explain the differences between the two. And rather than why was it smart in the beginning, because then you have to really get into the weeds of what was the climate of society in the 70s, what was going on, what was the fisticuff that caused the PCUSA and PCA to be formed in the first place. And I think that's a thorny topic. There's a lot of nuance there and things that you got to dig through. We can see that I think it was wise. And I think now we can say, yes, it was wise, because there's good fruit in the PCA. There's a lot of bad fruit in the PCUSA. So we can see that part. But what was going on that caused them to do that in the very first place? When the lightning bolt hit the tree, what was going on? And I think that's where he dropped the ball, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
If that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, now, the way you explained that, Jason, was fantastic. But I believe that that's probably where Pastor Everhard was coming from. It was more like, you can see that it was wise because look at how things are now, right?
But it would be right. And I'm not saying that he's wrong, but I think if we're going to go with the thesis, and hear me, I'm learning about debate. I'm learning too. So I'm a pre-K debate student. You got to stick with the thesis. Mm-hmm. If the debate thesis, I was born in 74, so right around that time. So me being born in 74, that means something had to happen in 73. Was it right for James and Belinda to get together in 1973? That's what we're talking about. Not the fruit of it that was born in April, but what happened in 73 to bring Jason about. Hopefully it wasn't too juvenile.
Nicholas, like, what difference does this make in reality? If you don't mind me asking, like, I'm guessing Ackerman would say, and I have heard people say, had they not split, there might have been a different future for the PCUSA. Is that basically what you would argue?
It's not necessarily what I would say. I'll say what I would say in a minute, but that is exactly, and that's why I think once we're finished here, this move into a little bit of Richard's opening statement, just so we can compare and contrast. But his whole contention is if all the conservatives that are in the PCA hadn't left the PCUSA, it would not be as much of a liberal denomination as it is today. So Summer's entire premise is basically the state of the PCUSA today is because of the fact that everybody left and went and formed the PCA. He thinks it would have been more biblically faithful to stay within the denomination, retake it, and reform it. My personal opinion is whenever you see something, so for example, let me take something that's slightly analogous. The Church of England over here, I say over here, I'm in Ireland, but the Church of England, it has gone so far into apostasy that they are now dropping the word church from the Church of England. So this is a denomination that is... So, well, who knows what they're going to call it. There's talk about calling it the Community of England, or, you know, so...
Wow.
Very, very liberal. So you have men in there who were bishops or elders who have been forced out of that denomination because of how liberal it's getting. There comes a certain point in time where you have to take a look around you and go, is this institution still savable? Is it a church? Or is it apostate and it's better for me to come out of her? My view on it is, much like what Jason was saying, is I think from today's standpoint, we can look at it and go, praise the Lord for the PCA. But if we're going purely on the debate, purely on the thesis, this is where I agree with what Jason just said, what Colton said, and what I said initially is where Matt dropped the ball was he should have been speaking more about what happened pre-73 to cause the split. What happened pre-73 that justified splitting? Because this is... Sorry, just let me add this a little bit in. This is not me being horrible, but a lot of the young men that I work with, they are nerds for theology, and I mean that in a good way. They watch debates 24/7. They sharpen themselves by debating each other on X back and forth. I mean, even in spaces. So the way they operate is on a very, very technical level. If you fail the thesis statement, you could be right about everything else you said. But if you fail the thesis statement, to them, in their mind, you lost the debate. So that's why for a lot of them, they viewed Matthew as losing the debate.
Yeah. Now, one thing I did hear with Matthew later on was him talking about wisdom and foreseeing things that would happen. So just to add a little bit more nuance to what we're saying here, I would argue Matt did try to address some of those things. He really did try. But what we're basically saying, what I'm hearing from both of you, is that if you're going to make the case that it was wise at the time, you really have to take the time to show from that time period why those things were foreseen as being an issue. And I seem to remember him trying to bring some things in. And this is where I think Zoomer, he knew his... Oh, and I was going to say this too. I've seen Zoomer... Again, Richard Ackerman is who I'm talking about. Yeah. Goes by Redeemed Zoomer. But I've seen him do a couple of different debates. But this is his wheelhouse. This is his wheelhouse. This is what he knows. So when Matt brought up historical things, Richard was like, that was this year. You need to go back to the year the PCA was formed. And like, so he was really good at but Matt was trying to make that case, but it's like, I get what happened. I can now that we're talking about it, I can hear what happened. Like he's thinking along the lines of look at the results, and that proves my point.
Yeah.
Which I think some people would agree with Matt, to be honest. Yeah. I think a lot of people would say, there would be people who would say he won the debate because look at the results. But the technicality here is what would have happened. This is what we don't know. So let me also throw in this. That's a hypothetical, and none of us can answer for sure. But look at Reformation history. The reformers tried to reform the Catholic Church. Did them trying to stay in the Catholic Church result in unity? No, that's the thing. In that case, there still was a split. So you never know what will happen. Even if you try to salvage an institution, you never know what's going to happen. On the other hand, look at the Southern Baptists. They at one time were moving in a more liberal direction, and conservatives, there was a conservative resurgence of the Southern Baptists, and they did stay unified. Those who chose to try to bring the SBC in the right direction. Now, the SBC today is still having its struggles, of course, but that's the thing. This is all hypothetical. So here's a question for Jason, though, if he happens to know. Do you know of anything that was happening when the PCA was formed that was like, oh yeah, this is bad, the ship's going down? Do you know of anything like that?
It was the civil rights movement. It was the embracing of the civil rights movement did in fact cause the PCA and the PCUSA to be formed, because the PCUSA wanted, and again, PCA is common knowledge. PCA was on the wrong side of history, if you will, on the civil rights movement, and they were against the civil rights movement and all those issues with it. And the PCUSA was correct, and they wanted to, and they divided over that in other topics, but that was the culturalism that really drove the wedge, the lightning strike, using my example from earlier. And so again, PCUSA was, I guess, correct on the civil rights movement. We could have a discussion about the veracity of that. The problem, in my opinion, and I don't know if I would have been able to hold my own on this either, is that was the first step in many steps of going into liberalism, and this is how they got here. So yeah, the PCA might have been wrong on that, hence, and since then has repented of that error. The problem is they're still biblically faithful, and the PCUSA has left the reservation as it relates to being biblically faithful. Did it really? I want to use the term that Matt was using, hindsight is 20/20 argumentation. I feel like he was saying, like, look, like now that we're here, we can look back and say the root of the tree is foul because we got rotten fruit over here. So we can look back, hindsight is 20/20. And I believe Zoomer and the debate thesis was starting at the root. How did you know that the fruit of the tree was going to be foul from there? And I think we could, I believe Matt could have and should have argued from that. I hope that made sense.
But if what you're 100%. Saying is the crux of the matter, Jason, if what you're saying is that at the time it was civil rights, that's a hard thing to defend. If that was the lightning rod issue, but maybe there were some other things that were a little bit more clear cut, biblically speaking.
Well, that, from my understanding, and again, just from my understanding, that was the biggest issue standing out.
Yeah.
Again, sure, there could have been a lot of other little small foxes that spoil the vine, but the biggest issue was that, from my understanding.
Sure.
Because if the thesis of the debate was which is the more biblical church today, Matt would have won hands down with everything he presented in his opening statement alone. But that wasn't the thesis of the debate. And I know a lot of people are maybe listening to this and going, well, what's that got to do? Either it's a biblical church or it's not a biblical church. It's not just me trying to be nitpicky. It's just, unfortunately, this is the nature of debate. Like, when we went back and we watched the James White, Corey Mather debate, one of the biggest complaints was during the cross-examination. People were saying, why is Mather asking these seemingly stupid questions. He was doing it whether people realized it or not. He was trying to make a point. His point was the whole, biblically speaking, can a leopard change its spots? No, it can't. So he was trying to get James White backed into a corner of saying, well, no, the leopard can't change its spots, the Ethiopian can't change its skin. So he was having a point going there. And this is what I say. There is an art to debate. Not everybody is called to debate. Not everybody is good at debate. And it may sound like being really nitpicky, but as I say, for a lot of people that watch this debate, they failed Matt purely on the thesis alone. It's not that they think Matt's wrong overall. They just failed him primarily on the thesis. Because if you go now to Zoomer's opening statement, you'll see, I think, from my opinion, a stark difference.
Yeah, let's check out his opening.
Yeah, let's listen to Redeem Zoomer now a little bit.
The screen, and when you begin your first word, I will start the timer.
Okay, thank you, Pastor Matt, for being willing to debate, and thank you, Pastor Keith, for hosting. I want to remind everyone that this debate is not a contest between today's PCA and today's PCUSA. What we are debating is whether the decision to split off from the mainline and form the PCA in 1973 was wise. So hypothetically, you could agree with Matt that the PCA is the best option today, but still agree with me that it would have been better if its founders had stayed to fix the mainline rather than abandoning it. Both Matt and I agree that liberalism is poisonous to the gospel, and the PCUSA has very bad problems with it. So my criticism is not of individuals, pastors, or congregations of the PCA. It's with the PCA itself and its formation. There are 7 reasons why the founders of the PCA made the wrong decision to split from the Southern Mainline Church, the PCUS. My first argument is from Scripture, because Scripture is our only infallible rule for faith and practice. Scripture addresses this very issue of what you should do when there is persistent heresy and idolatry in the church. So we must go to Scripture for the solution rather than leaning on our own understanding and what seems right to us based on pragmatism. God's people going astray and using his house for false teaching is not new at all. The Old Testament is littered with examples of God's people turning to false idols, and God raised up prophets to address it. The prophets, such as Isaiah and Elijah, denounced the heresy of the church in the strongest terms possible, but they never split off and created a new temple, even when the temple was literally being used as a place of pagan demon worship. Instead, they restored, retook, and reformed the temple many times. For example, King Josiah did a reformation, smashed the idols, and got rid of the heretical pagan priests. 2 Kings 23:5. 2 Chronicles 33 is a model chapter for taking back a church that's been hijacked by heretics. Verse 4 says, Manasseh built pagan altars in the house of the Lord. And verse 9 says, Manasseh led Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem astray to do more evil than the nations whom the Lord destroyed before the people of Israel. So we're talking child sacrifice here, just like abortion. But then after he repents, it says in verses 15 to 16, he took away the foreign gods and the idol from the house of the Lord and all the altars that he had built on the mountain of the house of the Lord and in Jerusalem, and he threw them outside the city. So what Scripture shows us is that the solution to idolatry in the church is not schism, but retaking the church.
Okay. I think that gives you a little bit of a taste. First of all, how he frames it makes it very clear what the thesis actually you have to prove here. Not whether present day you think one is better than the other, but was it wise at the time? But then he immediately goes to biblical examples in the Old Testament. So I'll let you guys, say anything you want to say here. I do have some things that come to my mind, but Nicholas, you seem to definitely think that Zoomer's arguing in the right kind of way.
So, again, let me make this clear just in case someone's hopping in now for the first time. I am on Matt Everhard's side on PCUSA being a bad denomination. It's filled with liberalism. Zoomer even said so himself.
Honestly, even Zoomer kind of agrees with that. Yeah,
he does, but note exactly what Richard said. He said purely on the topic of the thesis, you could agree with Matt that the PCUSA is filled with horrible liberalism, which it is, which he agrees with. But purely on the thesis topic, Richard stuck directly on the topic of the thesis, which was it wise back in 1973 to split off? Now, let me be fair, because I know we're going to have Matt on the channel. Matt did, on a few occasions, bring up a few points where he was like, well, back in the day, this is, they foresaw this coming on the horizon. But the problem was Matt's core argument was things from 2013 onwards. He was presenting all the modern day stuff of why that, and I'm not being horrible, but PCUSA bad was basically the argument. Zoomer maybe wouldn't even disagree with that. He would maybe say, yes, it is bad. That's why we're trying to retake it. So again,
can I just add something here? Because I really feel like this is important. What I hear Richard saying is, it is bad, but look at the Old Testament. That was bad. You don't abandon the institution just because things are bad.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he's saying, right?
He is, and I'm going to pass over to Jason in a minute, but I just want to bring up Kevin's last comment there. He says the Old Testament
example is bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you want me to bring that up?
Yeah, just bring it up on the screen just so people can see it. I'm not going to get into this right now because I would need to hear the rest. I would need to be reminded of what the rest of his examples from the Old Testament was. However, I was texting with one of my friends, the guy I was telling you gentlemen about beforehand. He's big lover of anything Presbyterian. We were texting as the debate was going on. This was my first watch through. And even I said at this time, the problem with that argument of arguing, well, look at all the things that happened in the temple. Well, here's the problem. That's the same temple that God's glory left. His presence left the temple. And then he prophesies, I am going to tear this temple down. So it's not a good argument. I understand why Richard went there. I understand why he, if you say, for example, he brought that argument up and we read in the pages of scripture and, the temple from that point on was cleansed and it never had another, but his argument is solid. But the problem is this was a recurring part of Israel's history to the point where God's glory gets up and says, I'm gone. I am out of the temple. Jesus, God in the flesh, when he is here. And his disciples says to him, Lord, look at these lovely stones, these buildings. Jesus says, not one stone will be left on top of the other. That's the point. So I agree with Kevin. His argument is bad. I don't know what Richard's response would be to that, but that's neither here nor there. But anyway, I'm rambling, Jason. Over to you.
Well,
yeah. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I don't know if I agree 100%. I like that he went to scripture. I like that part, of course, but I don't know if I agree 100% with that argument that he's using. And because at that point, I do think he's getting into some sticky waters and saying, well, are you trying to say that denominations are biblical? Are you saying that God is only at certain denominations? Like, I think you can go down a whole nother path and create a much bigger problem than he was really trying to create. So I don't know if I would agree with that 100, but okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm reading what Kevin said.
Yeah, that's okay.
I feel like first of all, his example from the Old Testament really gets at the heart of the way Zoomer thinks, though, which is he really is thinking in terms of institutions. I don't know what he would say either. I have a feeling he'd have some sort of an answer. I mean, one thing you could say, I guess, is that while it's true eventually God did judge the temple, for sure, it wasn't man doing that. It wasn't God saying, okay, I'm waiting for people to leave the temple and then I'll bring my judgment. Right? So never were people in some way initiating a leaving of the temple. That was really God who initiated that. Does that make sense?
It does. I wouldn't get into this right now because we've said we're going to do this in a future episode, but that would also depend on your eschatology, because I look at Revelation as being primarily fulfilled. I believe that Revelation was written pre-destruction of the temple. And I would argue that whenever God says, "Come out of her, my people," he was telling them to come out of not just the temple.
But that's if I'm understanding you correctly, then that's God initiating it. So if God said to leave, then you have the permission to leave. But with the Old Testament, they weren't commanded by God to leave the temple, even when things were not going well, until the time of Christ.
Yeah. And that's fair, but what you could then point to is God's word authoritative enough to tell you that when a church is no longer being a church?
Yeah. Now he does bring a New Testament example, I believe, which is very pertinent now to what we're saying. And I think this would be more helpful. I don't know how long it is into his talk there, but I do think he says even in the New Testament, when you have churches doing bad things, the answer is not to somehow, leave. It's just to keep, so Jesus, when he's dealing with the church in Revelation, it's still the church. It's not forming something new. Ultimately, you just have to. Now, again, he's thinking institutionally.
Yeah, and that's the difference, because we would come from two very different. Like, I know I would definitely come from a very different place from him. The church is where God's people are, where the sacraments are rightly administered. Correct. He does think and a lot of these young guys do, and again, I admire it, but they think very institutionally that, if you leave this certain institution, you have left the church. So, it's, as I say, I actually admire their goal in one sense. I just don't know how successful it's going to be, if it is. And again, I think some young men want to be in that movement just because it's cool and edgy as well.
It's the young, restless, and reform movement. 2.0, 2.5, whatever.
Yep.
I would have a question for Richard. Why worry about the usefulness of trying to reform the PCUSA when you have the PCA now? You could honestly leave your PCUSA church, say goodbye to your drag queen pastor and your female deacons and elders, and just walk across the street down the corner and join a PCA church and help them remain faithful.
I've heard his take on this.
Oh, so I've not heard it. So I would love to.
His belief is that the mainlines have the greater potential influence, if you want to put it that way. In other words, they have the resources. So if you go to some random place in America, they may be a really small town, but they may have a PCUSA building there that could, again, he's thinking very institutionally, whereas other denominations wouldn't have the money and the resources to put those things in places all over the country. And they have the institutions. So what he's saying is the infrastructure's there. That's why you want to go there, because they have money, they have resources. If you could take that back for conservative purposes, it would be way more effective than, in his view, than what the PCA is able to do.
And I do apologize, I didn't see that part of the debate. Then I would disagree.
I don't think that was in the debate. That was just something I've heard him argue in another place.
So your point's not in the debate, but he does bring it up. It's after this statement. His main contention's not just the infrastructure and the money. He is very against schism. So he believes in apostolic succession, not necessarily, like the Catholics do, but like laying on of hands, but, presbyters. So he believes, and I'm using internet speak here, so forgive me, but like, you can't just get up and go and start Jim Bob's local PCA church down the road by yourself. You're going off and you're doing that in your own authority, in his view. So, and I don't think he's necessarily wrong on that, because I do come from like a higher church background. Like, I do think you do need to be ordained. You do need to, come from elders. You can't just go out and randomly start a church and say, hey, I'm now the pastor. So whether you agree with him or you disagree with him on this topic, his main contention is he basically thinks that the people that started the PCA had no authority to go and start the PCA. So he even said it in that little clip we just listened to. His problem is not with the individual people in the PCA. His problem is the PCA. He thinks it shouldn't exist.
Got it. Okay. I disagree with that, but I mean, that's fine. And in my argument, I was only saying, if you're in a bad church right now, I'm not saying go start a church. I was going to say go join a church.
Yeah, oh yeah.
That was clear what I said. I disagree with him on that, but I mean, I might need to hear a little bit more of his thought process and how he cooks. But my pushback on that would simply be, can you show me in history where a institution went so far awry that just by the sheer number of just people within it were able to bring it back to biblical, solid Christian? Because again, all this, the infrastructure and money and influence, all those things are great, but Elon Musk has that. Jeff Bezos has that. All these political figures that we talk about on a regular basis have that, and they don't have Christ. So why would the first thing I do be to seek after trying to bring this behemoth back to Christ when you have a miniature behemoth in Christ and that you could just join? I don't get what.
I know his thinking on that, so I can tell you what.
Okay, go ahead.
What his thought is, which is. It's not as hard as it sounds. And now I'm putting it. I'm putting it in. I'm doing my wording of what he has said. But basically, it's that because the institution, or because these churches are dying, in other words, the older liberal guard is getting older, there's an opportunity for a large influx of conservative younger people to go in and take control.
So my hand raised question is why? So show me a PCUSA church that you have brought a large number of conservatives into, over here on 123 Main Street, on the corner of Main Street in Boston, where you were able to bring a large number of conservatives in and help shift that, from drag queen story hour and female elders and deacons, and shift it back. Show me the microcosm of that working, and then we can have the conversation.
I think he would say his own church he goes to is one of those. Well, here's kind of the nuance of it. It's probably that he's saying there are a lot of churches that are in the PCUSA that are more conducive to that shift. They may not be the extreme ones, but they're not quite so crazy liberal. So they're more conducive to changeover. And he has a whole website talking about churches that would be more on the conservative side. Now I need to set aside that whole topic because we need to talk about Zoomer's definition of conservative, because that's actually kind of a little bit of a sticking point here with all this. But I think his idea would be you take the moderate churches, bring them more conservative. If you have enough of them over time, they will have great influence in the denomination as a whole. You're probably not anytime soon going to win over the, I'm thinking it's these big urban churches that are the most liberal. You're not going to win those. I don't think he thinks you're going to win those right now. But let's talk about conservative, because we really need to hit on that. Matt Everhard did a good job of bringing this out, that Zoomer, when he says conservative, it's not really the same exact thing as what Matt would view as conservative. Okay. And I've thought that many times myself. Like Zoomer's idea of conservative, I'll give you an example. When we think of how you view the first chapters of Genesis, you wouldn't think someone who's an evolutionist is a conservative. Zoomer is an evolutionist, but he thinks of himself as being very conservative. Zoomer would put a church that has a female pastor but is still orthodox in many ways as being more on the conservative side. Most of, people in solid conservative circles would not consider these to be conservative positions. So it's conservative compared to the rest of his denomination.
I know what the problem is. I know what the problem is.
Yeah.
The problem is conservatism is not the goal. Conservative, because Candace Owens is a conservative. There's tons of people on the right who are conservatives that are just as much an atheist as today is Wednesday. So the conservatism is not the goal. Sure, you don't believe in munching up babies and you don't believe that marriage is between a man and a woman. Fantastic. That's good common sense. That means you have you got a couple brain cells working and you got some eyes. Got you. That does not mean that conservatism isn't the goal. Faithfulness to Christ brings about conservatism. True conservatism.
I may not have explained that well then, because
that's okay.
I'm not saying Ackerman is advocating for like any kind of political conservatism.
I was just saying.
I wasn't there though.
Yeah, I was only saying.
What I'm trying to say. Okay.
No, I apologize, brother. I was only saying that there's a whole bucket load of conservative ideas that people will amen to and nod their head to, but they still are not submitted and surrendered to Christ. And like, for example, you can say, hey, I believe that Genesis 1-3 is real. And so they'll check the box and throw you into conservatism. But I believe that God used evolution to bring it about. Oh, wait, hold on, wait. Like, so there's a lot of other issues that come about. So I'm saying, I don't know if even going after conservative, saying conservative is the goal, period, is the right avenue to take, because conservatism isn't the goal. It's faithfulness to Christ should be the goal, the aim, and it should direct your conservatism or your political views or your views about evolution and science, all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, all of it bows its foot at the foot of the cross. So bows its knee at the foot of the cross. Sorry. I hope that made sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So,
I think so.
I don't want to dunk on Zoomer. He seems like a good guy, so I'm not at all mad at him at all of that nature. I'm just saying, I don't think that we should seek these other things it's almost like we're trying to help the cause of Christ. We need institutions, we need finances, we need infrastructure. The apostles had none of those things. Matter of fact, they had all those things working against them when they were being chased hither and yon, spreading the gospel. So I don't know if we should look to institutions and finances and all that kind of stuff in order to produce what we should be producing, which is disciples.
Yeah. I think
that's a very, very different perspective than Zoomer, because he's an institutionalist for sure. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Nicholas.
No, I was fine. I was going to say we'll see a lot more stuff coming out. I think if we go, obviously we can't play it all because, again, I think it was 10 or 15 minutes each, but if we go and take a couple of Matt Everhard's, so go to the Q&A, if we go to a couple of Matt's questions for RZ and then a couple of RZ's questions for Matt.
Yeah, I'll see if I have it here. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna sample here just a little bit of the middle here.
Yeah, so Pastor Matt, I want to know how you would define schism.
Schism is the sin of leaving an ecclesiastical body for unjustified reasons.
Okay, so do you think there are some schisms that are justified and some that are not?
Yes, I do. I think certain sins or certain schisms could definitely be justified, and there are others that would not be justified.
Okay, so what are the specific conditions under which schism is justified and when it's not?
Well, I listened to your conversation with Gavin Ortland, and I thought it was very interesting that you seemed to mention two situations in which that would be plausible. The one would be if you were excommunicated, and you mentioned the Roman Catholic Church excommunicating.
Just so we don't waste time, I'm wondering what you think the standard is.
Could you repeat the question one more time?
Under what conditions is schism justified?
Okay, so according to excommunication, if you were excommunicated, if you were essentially disciplined But I would also add, you mentioned persecution, but I would also add heresy and blasphemy to that. That would certainly justify schism.
You think heresy and blasphemy justify schism, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so Robert Bailey says that in 1 Corinthians, they were profaning the Lord's table. And in Galatians, there were errors that destroyed grace and made Christ of no effect. Yet from none of these churches did any of the apostles ever separate, nor gave they the least warrant to any of their disciples to make a separation from any of them.
I guess I could let Matt answer that, just because I kind of left it hanging.
I think Robert Bailey is wrong.
I have not read Robert Bailey, but if he has not included heresy and blasphemy, then I would say yes, he is incorrect.
Yeah, so...
Okay. That gives you a good taste, though, of the kind of back and forth with Zoomer asking Matt. I'll try to find one with Matt asking Zoomer, too.
That's what I was initially going to jump in with. I think Matt's question time was first, so I may be wrong, but you may have to go backward to get Matt's questions.
Oh, okay. I
could be wrong with that. I could be wrong.
I think that's the first time I see them all up here, though. So
Okay, might have been Zoomer asking first then.
I think so, because I'm about to. I see a more three-way here, and I think that's where Matt's asking Zoomer.
Yep, that's fair.
Do you want me to put that up now?
Oh no, we can discuss the part we just heard first if you want.
Okay,
sure.
But let's do that.
That was just initially whenever they first started speaking. That's why I put my hand up, because I thought, oh wait, you're jumping Matt's part. So go for it, brother.
No, I respect what Richard said. I think there's a problem of volume in the examples of passages that he read out. We're talking about 2 or 3 or 10 people that are misbehaving, and the vast majority of people are behaving. And I believe what Matt is seeing when he said blasphemy and heresy is that the vast majority of people are misbehaving or espousing a blasphemous teaching or heretical teaching. And there's a small number of folk that are being, for lack of a better term, persecuted, or they're the ones trying to hold up the standard against this large number of people. I think if he had painted that picture in that way, I think there's really no other way around it. You're going to have to, the 10 people, you're going to get disciplined out of the church, allegedly. But you're going to be a problem because all you're doing is butting against the 100 or 200 people that are all misbehaving. So I think that the picture wasn't drawn properly, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think this really gets into the heart of it. Like if you've watched, like I haven't watched a whole lot of Redeem Zoomer, because I have nothing against the guy personally. I just find he can be very arrogant, which I think a lot of that did come out in this debate. But to his credit, debate sometimes can be a feisty back and forth. So I'm not going to discredited him on that. But this is the heart of it for him, is he does take very seriously schism. Like he looks at the fact that one of Rome's biggest claims against Protestants is, now obviously this number's fake, it's false. Trent Horn, Roman Catholic apologist, has even, refuted this and faced a lot of flack for it, but this common theme of, Protestant churches, all they do is schism from one another and they branch off, and there's 40,000 different denominations. This is part of what Redeem Zoomer believes he is fighting against, this idea of just schisming, because now this is not me arguing about the PCUSA and the PCA here, because I would agree with Matt. I do think there's genuine blasphemy happening, but his whole thing of schism should be the very, 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 very last resort. So that's why he was kind of nitpicking at Matt, because he was like, what is your definition of schism? What warrants leaving a church? Because again, his entire premise is the PCA shouldn't exist.
Yeah. And we did get a question.
There's a couple
about what Zoomer would say about Titus 3, 10, and 11. Let me throw that passage up here.
Yeah.
So it says, it's talking about avoiding foolish controversies, genealogies, dissensions, and quarrels about the law, for they're unprofitable and worthless. As for a person who stirs up division, after warning him once, then twice, have nothing more to do with him, knowing that such a person is warped and sinful, he is self-condemned. So I mean, I apologize, Colton. It's hard in just a short sentence there, but if you want to clarify anything about that, feel free to clarify that in the comments. Yeah. I'm guessing he would say, avoid that person, meaning don't allow them to cause division in the church, and keep the church unified and the institution in place.
Well, but again, that's one person. That's one person misbehaving. The vast majority of people are behaving and following faithfully with the Lord. I just wonder how this would be written if the vast majority of people were misbehaving. They'd be called a synagogue of Satan. We see that in Revelation, like come out from among them. So I do think there's good reason when the vast majority of people are embracing blasphemy and heresy that maybe it's time for you to, my people, come up out from among them, because you're literally just in the world. I mean, for all intents and purposes, if the church has gone into heresy and blasphemy, you technically haven't left the world. you're just gathering with unbelievers. They're not called out of that. You're not in amongst the called out ones. So I think there's again, without hearing all of it, I think there's good reason to believe that that is the right way to handle it.
And just to touch on your point as well, Jason, just before we go to Colton's thing, again, Jesus actually warns the 7 churches in Revelation. Not all of them, because obviously there's one church in particular that gets a glowing report. But Jesus actually says to them, if you do not repent, I will put out your lampstand. That's not talking about salvation there. That's talking about their ministry. That was talking about the church. Jesus is saying, I will remove your church. It will no longer, because you have ceased to be a church. And that is what happens whenever we see, churches or institutions moving into apostasy. They die because Jesus withdraws grace. He puts the lampstand out because it's no longer a church. Now, I know RZ would disagree with that. That's fine. But again, I think it's relevant.
So what about, and I think this is Colton's clarifying here a little bit, follow up to the previous question. What if the church is mostly the divisive people?
Well, without putting words in RZ's mouth, I think he would say you stay and you fight.
Yeah, but I wonder, is there a number? I'm not trying to be funny, but is there a number? Like, let's say there's 10 people in the church and there's 2 people that are fall into this category. Stay and fight. 3, 6, 7? Like, at what point do you say, yeah, we're the minority here that are trying to fight the good fight, and staying here at 1, 2, 3 church is not working because the 1, 2, and the 3 are all misbehaving. So we might need to go over here and go join another church, or like the whole denomination is just completely wilding out. I do think that there's a little bit more pushback, and we can look at, maybe that was part of the problem, maybe not really digging into what was the state of Presbyterianism in 1973 in a much better, more robust way. Like, look, there was 75 churches, 73 of them were wilding out, 73 of them wanted to go in this direction. They didn't believe that it should have gone in that direction, so the other 2 left and started the PCA, and y'all became the PCUSA. Or whatever, really do a more historical dig into it. And whether it was wise to do it, I think, and they did it because it made sense following these examples that we see in Scripture.
Yep.
Well, if you guys are up for it, maybe I can throw the debate back up. So I think I have a spot where Everhard is asking Zoomer a question.
Let's go.
I think you were right, Nicholas. I think this was back a little bit. It's just I think the Q&As were real short.
Yeah.
So hopefully I got this right. Oops, I should probably.
That are justified and some that are not.
Yes, I do. I think
Okay, no, that's still the same.
Still RC,
Yeah, it's okay.
Let's see if I can find Matt here.
Is it an attribute of God alone to know the future surely?
Yes, with certainty and infallibility, yes.
Do you know the future with certainty and infallibility?
Of course not.
Okay. Do you know what would have happened if the if the PCA had not formed?
I don't know with certainty. I know with a very high probability.
How can you know it with that high of a probability what would have happened?
Due to mathematics, because I can check the vote margins on keystone issues in the denomination, and I can see that the missing margins would have been filled in by the conservative churches had they stayed.
So you're able to, with your human knowledge, extrapolate the future and make guesses about the next 5, 10, 15, 25, 40 years of what would have happened in the PCUSA?
It depends on what we're talking about. If we're talking about issues where the vote was like 55 to 45 and 15% of the conservatives split off, it's a guess of probability. You're right that only God knows the future infallibly. I know the future fallibly, just the way I knew 2 hours ago that this debate would happen.
The General Assembly is a court of the church, is that correct?
Yes.
When a court of the church acts, it acts as the church, is that correct?
Yes.
The Permanent Judicial Commission, the PJC, is analogous to the Supreme Court of the PCUSA, is that correct?
In some sense. It is... the General Assembly itself has divine authority, and the judicial courts only have human authority. So the judicial courts don't speak for the whole church the way the General Assembly itself does.
The interpretations of the PJC are the official interpretations of the PCUSA, is that right?
Only by human authority, not by divine sanction.
In 1974, the PJC refused ordination to Walter Kenyon because he was against female elders and pastors. Isn't that so?
I'm not sure if it was 1974 but let's just say it was that. Yes, and that is utterly irrelevant to what we're talking about today, because that was in the Northern Church, and we're talking about the Southern Church, the PCA split from.
But that was the formation of Ascension Presbytery, which is the first Northern Presbytery of the PCA, so it's incredibly relevant to me. In 1981, the PJC found that the Mansfield casemen denied the deity of Christ, and yet that was a permissible position within the mainline church. Is that right?
Yes, that's horrible, and I've talked about that many times.
Do you tithe to the PCUSA?
Yes.
Do you give per capita and advise others to do the same?
What do you mean give per capita?
Are you not familiar with per capita?
I can't ask questions. The answer is yes, I tithe to the PCUSA, and any good member of the PCUSA should tithe to it. And
do you
that's
support per capita?
I'm not sure what that means.
Okay, you're not familiar with that as part of your own denomination. You don't know that?
That's correct. I do not know that as part of my own denomination.
And you're an ordinand in the PCUSA, or you intend to be?
Not yet. I'm just starting seminary, but eventually.
If ordained, would you allow a minor to read the PCUSA's website unsupervised?
No, and I don't think you would either.
No, I wouldn't. If ordained, would you allow a minor?
All right, I think we got, that goes on for a bit. But again, this gets back to a little bit what you said, Nicholas, that this is present day.
Yeah.
So, but when he did bring up the past, Ackerman seemed to know, like, okay, that was the North, this wasn't the South. So
yeah, I will never take away from the guy. He is very smart. He's very well read. My issue with him, and it's not even an issue, it's more just I've never had many direct encounters with him, but any encounters I have had with him, he has came across very rude, dismissive, and arrogant, especially to people I know. Not even going to get into a personal encounter that I did, not me, but I was there and I witnessed it. I unfortunately think he has got such a large audience at such a young age. He's still young now, but when he first acquired his audience, and that can go to your head. It can really make you think that you're an authority. He is an incredibly smart man, like I said. I think he will do great things. But he knows this topic very well. And, we can address this part of the Q&A now in a minute, but like this is what I mean by like this is where the Q&A got a little bit strange and heated. Previously, we haven't seen it, but if you've watched the debate, you know this. Zoomer spent quite a considerable amount of his own time questioning Matt over what is Nestorianism and is John MacArthur a Nestorian.
Oh, yeah.
There's where Zoomer went off the thesis topic. He threw it out the window. So the same criticism I give Matt Everhard, I will now give Redeem Zoomer. If you're going to debate, stick to the topic. Don't do these stupid questions, because all it really turned into is because Matt slightly misspoke whenever he tried to explain what Nestorianism was. But that's because he just threw on the spot. That's the last thing you expect to hear in a debate that's not about it. But it seemed to bring great joy to Redeem Zoomer whenever he's like, oh, so you don't know what Nestorianism is? It became a very prideful, look at how I've tripped you up. If you were in the live chat at the time, you would have seen that went down like a great celebration.
I just want to clarify or question here. I'm actually sincerely trying to remember. Mm-hmm. Did Pastor Everhard bring up that topic, though? I'm trying to remember, like, did he
I don't know if he brought it up.
I might not be remembering right. The reason I'm wondering is, did Pastor Everhard say something like, you've denigrated past? I don't know. Maybe I'm remembering it wrong. He
did bring it. He did.
John MacArthur.
Yeah, they talked about MacArthur, but I don't think Matt brought John MacArthur up because it's not relevant to the debate. I believe, I could be wrong, but I've watched it twice, and from what I can remember, no, it was RZ that brought up Nestorianism and John MacArthur. So again, that's what I mean by like
Everhard said something like, "You've denigrated Pastor MacArthur," but I honestly don't remember who started.
I think that was near the end, whenever they're doing their closing statements and or the audience questions, because what Matt was basically saying to him is, you would throw someone like a John MacArthur under the bus, but you would go and take communion with someone, a lady with blue hair and nose piercings and, whatever, to which RC pretty much says, yes, I would. And Matt rightly said, I think that'll become the quotable moment of the debate. So...
yeah. We did get a question from the audience that's been kind of hanging there for a while, so I don't know if the person's still watching.
Yeah, I was going to say, just for you to ask it, Kevin's leaving. So Kevin, thank you for watching, brother.
Yes, thank you, Kevin. So Tony asking from a Church of England perspective, I guess. Put it in my wheelhouse for me to understand. Should Wesley have split with the Church of England instead of trying to reform it? So putting it in that context.
Again, it really depends. If you're an RZ, you would say the answer is no. If you're, looking at it from, say, for example, my situation, I would look at the Church of England. So here's where it is kind of relatable. I could look at what the Church of England once was and say it was faithful, and over time it's become liberally and progressively worse. I have the great ability to look at it now in hindsight and go, oh wow, Church of England is apostate. But looking at it from Wesley's time, had it strayed far enough from the truth that warranted him schisming? I don't know. I'm not an expert in that time in history, especially with the Church of England. But I know what RC's answer would be for that is no, he shouldn't have.
And I know we're rounding the bases, but I kind of would like to know, like, under what circumstances would Reform Zoomer say that it is time to leave a church? And what does he mean by leave a church? Would you, for example, if the church that he attends right now really started wilding out, would you go to another, but you realize that the other PCUSA churches in your community are green light and are okay with what's going on at this church? Would you just go to another one of them? Or would you eventually say, I'm going to go ahead and become a Baptist, or I'm going to go ahead and join a PCA church that's not wilding out and holds a standard? Like, what would be the rationale, because at some point you would have to say it might be too far gone, or there's no way to redeem this situation. To me, I don't know what I guess I have to better understand his idea that the PCA was illegitimate from the word go. I have to better understand that part, right? When the lightning struck, why he would say that, because that's fine. In retrospect, you can say that, but now we have to look at it and say, yeah, I don't know if you can really truly convince me that if they had stayed together, that they wouldn't have eventually just left the church and went and become Baptists, or left the church and would became Lutherans. I can't, like, help me understand how you believe that they would have stayed in fighting for the denomination would have actually played out. Just some questions. I mean, I don't think he's a bad guy, but I just have more questions about it.
Yeah.
You're asking in the Presbyterian church how it would have played out?
Right. Like, because he's saying, like, hey, based upon mathematics.
He said in the debate, based on votes, it would have played out differently.
But I think we all realize that there is this little, you can line this thing up as perfect as you want to, but there's this little nuance, this little nugget that's always going to happen called the act of God. And something's going to happen that you just did not budget for. And to say that, if the PCUSA and PCA never split, they would be faithful. That's not necessary. You don't know that. You just can't say that with fidelity.
I think it's more what I'm hearing him say a lot is, it gets back to your first question, Jason. He basically doesn't think people should be the splitters. Like, you shouldn't leave. Instead, you should be forced to leave. He would probably have a different take if all the PCA people were kicked out or persecuted. I think that's what he's trying to say. But then it does bring up your question, as far as why he doesn't go to a PCA church today. But that just brings us back to, he thinks the institution is worth preserving.
Not just worth
has
preserving,
more potential influence.
I was going to say, not just worth preserving, he has said in this debate and in other videos, I can only take him at his word, but he said he would be willing to die versus leave the church. So that's how strongly he feels about it.
Yeah, he believes it is God's institution, so to speak. Again, just to use it in those terms. Yeah.
I don't know how hard it would be found. Maybe if you put it in 2 times speed and play Matt's questions a little bit more, you will get to the point where Zoomer actually says he would rather worship. I think Matt says to him, he points out an example of where a Muslim cleric held a service in the PCUSA, and I forget what exactly was happening. Matt basically said to him, would you still attend that service versus, attend the PCA? And Redeem Zoomer's answer was, yes, I would. I would still attend the PCUSA.
Okay, I can speed it up.
That's problematic.
Is a 1.5 going to be too fast? 1.5 good?
I would go maybe 2 times speed just until you find it, and then put it at 1.
Oh, okay. I'm not good at that. Remember, I'm the non-multitasker you got doing this here.
Man, come on.
All right, I'm gonna do my best. You tell me when if we get to it and I go past.
I know to view the PCUSA's videos on queer sex.
Of course not. And I don't see how this is relevant to the topic we're discussing.
It's incredibly relevant because we're talking about wisdom as avoiding danger. If ordained, would you allow a minor? Would you advise a minor to attend the PCUSA's LGBTQ+ camp? I would advise them explicitly not to do that. If you are eventually ordained in the PCUSA, would you allow your youth group to watch Unbound videos? No, that's the most heretical garbage I've ever seen. And this is just like periods in the early church where, despite being under the same organizational umbrella, bishops were calling each other heretics and going to war with each other. This is not. Mr. Moderator?
I'm done. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Are the PCUSA's General Assembly and official committees an LGBTQ+ activist organization?
I would say so.
Do you admit that the PCA, my denomination, has the 3 marks of a true church: preaching, the sacraments, and discipline?
Yes, of course the PCA is a true church.
Do you admit that the PCA, my denomination, has the 4 attributes of a true church: 1, holy, Catholic, apostolic?
I would say there's a severe threat to the Catholicity and the oneness regarding the PCA due to their schismatic nature, but for all intents and purposes, it is a true church, yes.
Coram Deo, before the face of God, in honesty, have you been convinced during this debate that the formation of the PCA was in fact wise, given all that it has done for the sake of the church?
No.
So you don't believe it was wise to form the denomination, the PCA, even though it's confessional, it's reformed, it's orthodox, it bears the 3 marks of the church and the 4 attributes of a true church. You deny the wisdom of its founding. Is that correct?
Correct, because I believe that the founders of the PCA could have done all the good that the PCA did within the bounds of the mainline had they stayed, and more, given the great resources in the mainline to draw on.
Astonishing. How many PCUSA Presbyterian meetings have you personally been to?
1.
Synod meetings?
0.
General Assembly meetings?
0.
Okay, very good. Final question: Is R.C. Sproul a Reformed theologian?
Yes, despite having some very weird views and not being a good representative of Reformed theology, his participation in the Presbyterian Church makes him a Reformed theologian. Yes.
All right, stop. So it'll be too hard to find it. Then it must actually be in the audience Q&A. But people can go and watch that themselves, and the debate's there for everyone to hear. The question Matt asked them essentially, he pointed out, that there was a Muslim cleric that held service in a PCUSA church. Matt essentially asked him, would you still attend worship there versus attending the PCA church? And Redeemed Zoomer's answer was yes, I would still attend the PCUSA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Jason's looking distressed over here.
No, it's just interesting. I'm hearing Zoomer go through, Matt asked him all these things. Would you do these? Would you do these? And he's saying no. And not only saying no, but he's saying this is heretical garbage and this is terrible and so on and so forth. And I'm like, sir, I don't get, I would not die for that.
Yeah.
There's no way.
It's interesting because I'm not defending him really. I'm just explaining like what I've heard him say. And what I've heard him say is what people should be doing is not like, he doesn't believe in compromising. He believes what you should do is stay and fight. And it takes courage to do that. So when he says die, he's not saying die for what it currently is. He's saying fight for what you want it to be. And don't run away from it.
But he has actually said too, though, because like within this debate, this is slightly different, but he has said this in the debate too. We missed it because it was either, it must have been in the audience Q&A where Matt's asking him a question because they still went back and forth a little bit, even though they shouldn't have. Matt asked him, would he allow a homosexual to partake in communion? And Redeemed Zoomer says, no, I would die before I allowed that to happen. So he's used language like that before, but he has also said in order for him to leave that church, he would either have to be persecuted and put out or killed. Yeah. So he has said, he would die for it. Yeah,
I believe that. I'm just saying when he expresses that sentiment, it's because he's saying, I'm so committed to it. I'm going to give my life for it, but I want to be sacrificial to make it what it should be.
Yeah.
Right. Even to stay and fight. Yeah. That's where he's coming from.
I disagree with it, but I understand.
Yeah. I know. And I think all of us, I come from fundamentalist background. Like that's my background. I understand the liberal versus fundamentalist debates of the past and how they played out. And I feel honestly in kind of a interesting position. Now, I will say as a Baptist, things are a little different because obviously Baptists are known for splitting. We don't have a good track record when it comes to unity, but but that being said, when it comes to like all of trying to figure out what institution to be part of, we're much more grassroots in how we think about church government. So we're a little more comfortable, I guess you could say, with just thinking of churches as being okay. We just want to be part of a faithful church. And that's kind of what we're going to focus on.
Yeah.
With Presbyterianism, you really do have more of a hierarchical structure, so to speak. So you really have it. It's really interesting to see how this plays out for you guys. I think we've really covered all the main. I'm actually seeing a comment here about church splits are Baptist church planting strategy. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It can be, unfortunately. I know that's in jest. That's funny.
Oh yeah.
I actually know of that happening for sure.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. But anyway, Go ahead, Nicholas.
No, I was just going to agree with you. That honestly, this is the debate that keeps on giving. There's so many things that you could go through this debate and talk about, because on both ends there were so many one-liners where it's like, okay, you could talk about that for at least 20 minutes and get a good topic out of it. So there's more good things to come up in the debate. So I would recommend people go and watch it if you haven't. And when I say good, I don't mean the things themselves are good, but like it made good viewing, I'll put it that way. Things did get a little bit more feistier towards the end of the debate, especially during the Q&A. And as I say, that it seems to be where the comment was made about, the Muslim cleric. And so a lot more, I would say, relevant questions came up because they were being asked from the audience point of view. So
yeah. But I think everybody got a good taste of the presentation styles and the logic being given from both sides, as well as our honest feedback. And I do want to kind of reiterate, I think, Jason, you obviously, I think all three of us agree in practice. But I know a lot of times in this video, I was trying to explain what I've heard Zoomer say, but I'm not really defending his position. I've heard him talk about these things, and that's where he's coming from. But we're going to have Pastor Everhard on in a few weeks, so we'll really get some.
I'll make sure I peep in. I'll make sure I listen in.
Yeah, dude,
yeah.
Right. But here's a question, not just for you two, but also for the audience. After what you've heard us discuss now, purely on the thesis topic, I'm not asking who you agree with more, but purely on the thesis topic, who do you believe won? Because here's what I said at the start of the show, my answer, my chalk vote. I actually believe Redeemed Sumer won based on the thesis topic.
Probably. That's fair.
Yeah. I'm understanding of that. And I could imagine a lot of judges, scoring it and maybe putting it that way. But I also, because I understand, I don't think it was a clear cut, like, he blew it out of the wall. Like, it wasn't like, I think Everhard held his own. I really do. And I think, even though technically, and you both did a good job of explaining it, technically you needed to go back and show in the early 1970s. That's what needed to happen. Still, it's a very powerful point that hindsight has proven kind of like, the
wisdom
PCUSA,
of that, right?
if you're looking at where it is today, something had to be there in the past to bring it to where it is in the present.
So here's a really good analogy. It's probably not going to top Jason's tree one, because Colton in particular really like that. Here's an example. This say you've got divorced parents, so like my mum and my dad's not together. Could I look at it now and go, was it wise for my mum and my dad to split? I could look at the fact, okay, well, they really dislike each other. They fight. They can't be in the same room as each other. Those are present day realities. So I could look at that and go, yeah, it was probably wise. But the question of the debate was it wise back when, 1990, whenever they split? Was it wise for them to do that? Should they have got a divorce? I think my answer probably would have been no. They should have tried to get counselling. They should have tried to work things out. So from a debate point of view, if you wanted to show that it was wise, you would have to have shown back then why it was wise for them not to try and continuing the relationship. That's where, purely from a debate point of view, like Colton even there said, Sumer won based on topic. Matt was more biblical in all he said. Absolutely. That's the thing, because I am on Matt's side on this. I just think purely, if I was just an unbiased judge, I would unfortunately have to award the win to RZ.
Yeah.
But again,
I think
Zoomer debates these kinds of things a lot, and this specific topic is in the heart of his wheelhouse.
Huh?
I think if Everhard had the chance to do a debate like this 2 or 3, 4 times, I think things would get more and more even for sure.
Perhaps, but I'll let Jason go because I see he was going to say something there. But again, I actually, this is where it'll be great to have Matt on and he can clarify this. This is just my theory. I don't think Matt cared about the thesis all that much. I think Matt just wanted to put up a glaring warning sign and go, run, run.
Jason agrees with you.
That's, I mean, me and Nicholas, the more we get together, the more we seem to share similar thoughts. I don't, again, I think RZ is a debate master. Again, I'm learning. I'm a pre-K debate student. But Matt Everhard wanted to get in here, and again, he wanted to just blast the PCUSA and make sure people are aware, because there's a lot of PCUSAs even here where I live. There's a lot of them. You have to search a little bit harder to find a PCA, and even in that, sometimes there's got to do a little bit of digging, even in that group, small group. So I totally get what he was doing and such like that. I think the debate, okay, whatever that is. All right, let me just make sure I blast them. So love Matt. I think Richard, again, is a brother. I don't disparage either of them. I just think that their intentions for coming on the stream might have been different. Zoomers was to debate. Matt was to, Everhard was to hold up a glaring sign and saying, watch out, run, flee the wrath to come. That's where I was going to say. So shout out to that.
Well, Pastor Matt is a pastor, and a pastor is often thinking in terms of protecting people, trying to keep the church pure.
I'd hate to see my pastor in a debate. I'd hate to see my own pastor. And if Joel were here, I don't know. I have no idea. But I bet you it would probably be more akin to what Everhard did than what Zoomer did. And they would probably say the same thing. Now, the Ginger Avenger lost.
That being said, Zoomer at this point in his life is not a pastor, and he's gotten very used to debating, but he has recently said that he's going to pursue the pastorate. So Zoomer will likely one day be a pastor. Yeah, that'll be interesting.
I guess we'll see. Maybe it'll be the reformation of the PCUSA. We'll all look back one day and say, "Wow, he was a reformation for the PCUSA." Okay, he was able, by God's grace, to get this ship right back.
If he can turn the PCUSA, I mean, obviously, God can do anything, right? So
anything, absolutely,
that'd be awesome. That'd be awesome. Right. I mean, if God were to do that, that would be the most extreme example, or it's one of the most extreme examples of a denomination very liberal. Yeah. Sorry.
No, you're right. I was just going to say, and that's why I say, I technically think the goal's noble. I do. I'm just not a fan of the language that Zoomer uses, that, conservatives that left or are leaving the denomination are cowards. That's ridiculous. That type of, that's just nonsense. The other thing is, again, I know it probably sounds like I'm harping on this. If there are young men that are genuinely like Redeemed Zoomer, and I know some of them online on X who genuinely do care and want to see the PCUSA be restored, they want to see it taken out of the hands of liberals. Fantastic, noble goal. However, there is a lot of people online that it's just a romantic notion, and it's seen like some big, lofty goal. Oh, look what I'm involved in. I'm involved in retaking the PCUSA, and it's not. I don't think they share the same convictions. I think for some young men, it just seems to be like oh, look what I'm involved in. I could be wrong in my thinking. I'm just saying this is what I see. But yeah, look, I wish them all the best, and Lord willing, maybe they will retake it many years down the line. I don't know, but yeah.
Well, I said before we started here that I might throw grenades toward you guys because this was a Presbyterian debate, and so I'm just going to put that up there because this was a comment. Not sure who won, but thought Presbyterianism was the loser. Now, Tony, I don't think he's Baptist. So
No, he's
it's not a Baptist saying this, but
he's Wesleyan, but I don't think he's saying it in a bad way either, because I think what he's getting at is, if any of the gentlemen lost, technically Presbyterianism lost. So I don't think he was saying that as a bad thing. So,
well, and oops, I'm sorry, and as we already mentioned, it's not like Baptists, which is my background, have a very good track record either, as far as church unity and that sort of thing. So these are difficult topics for sure. But let me close off here. Jason, were you going to say something?
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
hold on. Just when you're signing
put
off,
up Jason's channel.
Hey, I know that
while
guy.
we're kind of wrapping up here, Jason, Dear Woke Christian, definitely, if you haven't subscribed to his channel, he's got a lot of great content. And Jason, you cover a wide variety of topics. You've definitely been doing politics lately.
I do social and political commentary. I did start out when me and you first met. We were doing sermon reviews and book reviews and such of that nature. And I have moved into another realm and another niche, which is more social and political commentary from a Christian male perspective. So giving these commentaries, giving this review, but from the viewpoint of one who is submitted to Christ. So again, I think this is a better spot for me, more opportunities to talk about a wide variety of topics, whether it be Iran or protests in LA or anything else of that nature from the viewpoint of a Christian male perspective.
Yeah.
I appreciate it, man.
Look at
And
this.
there's a
This
lot
is
to talk
even
about.
at the
There's a
wall.
lot to talk about these days.
Oh, there's no dearth of topic conversations, none whatsoever. What are you about to say, Nick?
I was going to say, look, he even has the bell turned on for you.
Hey, Tim is a good supporter, man. Y'all
True,
be like
true
Tim.
friend right
Be
there.
like Tim. Be like Tim.
I'm pretty sure I've got Nicholas's channel.
Well, but before
followed
you do
as
that,
well.
Tim, could you pull up a Bible passage for me, please?
Sure.
Could you put up Ephesians chapter 5, verse 25 to 27? Because this is what I would like to end on. There's no denomination out there that is perfect. None.
Yeah.
But listen to what this says about the church. And we have to remember that here on earth, there's going to be these little in-house debates back and forth. But listen to this. Ephesians 5, 25 to 27. Husbands, love your wives, as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, so that he might present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. The church is not yet without blemish, but one day she will be.
Amen. And by the way, someone just asked about Jason's YouTube link. I put that in the chat, and here it is on screen. It's basically youtube.com/DearWokeChristian. But thank you, Nicholas, for that reminder, because it can sound like we're being negative, but in reality, this is to be expected, right? That we don't have perfect purity yet, but Christ is purifying his bride, and so praise the Lord for that. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. As usual, this is the highest numbers tonight that we've had since we started. This is, it just seems like the audience keeps growing throughout the stream.
That's cool.
But anyway, we've covered a lot, and I know we're all tired now, so we're going to have to get going. But we'll hopefully have Jason on. If he wants to come back on sometime, we'll get him back on here, and we'll have some other real lighthearted topic to talk about.
always looking forward to your emails. So
awesome.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank both of you for all your time and great insights on this topic. And thank you to the audience too. Really appreciate everybody hanging out with us and great questions and interactions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
All righty. We'll see
God bless,
you
gang.
all, Lord willing, next week.